In the meantime, I want to talk about another big story that we are following. Take a live look over the White House at this hour as the deadline is fast approaching. Funding for much of the Department of Homeland Security will run out at the end of the day on Friday. That is when a shutdown could potentially begin, and it would be a partial shutdown, of course. We have that clock running on the bottom of our screen right there on the bottom right. Now, if no deal is reached, the country could again be looking at the potential for a partial government shutdown, again related to DHS, the agency that's run by Kristi Noem. Democrats and Republicans remain at an impasse at last check here.
But what they really want, what Democrats want, what they're working towards is unimpeded illegal immigration. They want to continue the terrible policies of the Biden-Harris administration when they literally opened the border wide. And we brought in about 20 million illegal aliens into the country over that time period, many hardened criminals, dangerous persons. They don't want any of them deported. If you put a judicial warrant in the way, it will impede the entire process. It will add layers and layers of delay and an impossibility to apprehend and remove many people because we simply don't have the manpower, the time, the court systems to be able to do that. Under the current, the way the law works right now, the Immigration Customs and Enforcement has the ability to issue a warrant of removal and to go and apprehend these people. The Democrats want to stop that.
I mean, I think that there could be a path there. What I need to personally see here is for DHS to completely overhaul ICE. Agency's out of control. Leadership needs to be fired. Kristi Noem at DHS, at the head of DHS, needs to go. And they need to put some professionals in there that know how to overhaul an agency.
Yeah, I'm not going to give a penny to more public executions. These guys don't want to be accountable, and so I'm not going to fund it. Otherwise, that just means another, dead nurse named Pretty and a mom named Good.
What about Congresswoman DeLauro's bill about not funding Border Patrol and ICE, but funding all other pieces of DHS?
I'm fine with that. It's ICE and Border Patrol who are doing the public executions, and the bodies are piling up, and people have said enough. We were told most violent people are going to be gone. Instead, people are running through the factories and fields where they work. We're seeing a 6-year-old battling stage 4 cancer deported. That's not what anyone signed up for.
All right, I want to bring in Cameron Arcand there, political reporter at the Daily Wire, to talk about all of this and really what it means. Cameron, thank you so much for being here with us, as always.
Thank you.
And I want to start by asking kind of overall here, is an agreement even possible before that deadline?
Well, it's not looking great right now because right now I talked with a White House official last night. They did send that actual legislative text over to the Democrats at this point, but we don't really have any details public on what that could actually look like. Now, keep in mind, DHS encompasses a wide range of agencies outside of DHS and Border Patrol, and ICE already had a big swath of its funding already done and signed into law under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act last July. So that was already thing one there. But thing two is this encompasses other agencies, FEMA, TSA, the Coast Guard. And so there could really be wide-reaching implications here, but they want to use this as leverage to make some of these immigration reforms. But it seems like that could take a little bit more time.
And I wanted to ask what sort of impacts people could see kind of from all of this. If we do see a quote-unquote shutdown kind of go in place there, what does that really mean?
Yes, so this would be the only department that would experience a shutdown if there was a lapse in funding here. Probably wouldn't even see that many changes to the immigration operations. But if you remember from the shutdown last fall, TSA, longer lines, that could be an impact. Even an admiral in the Coast Guard was saying the other day that his people could go without paychecks, and certain operations outside of ones that are, really national security important could be stopped in the meantime if this does happen. So when you shut down a small agency, an agency like this, there are some pretty big implications, even though the rest of the government would still be funded through September.
You've, of course, been following this as you followed several potential shutdowns here. We've had you on quite a few times. Wanted to ask you what kind of makes this situation different from previous ones that we've seen, including just a couple weeks ago.
Well, what's unusual about this one is the fact that it really is just focusing on one department here. But I think what's so important is the fact that we could potentially see some sort of deal reached. I mean, keep in mind, the Democrats have been asking for pretty large demands here. They want a different type of warrant used for these arrests. They want an inter-roving patrols. They don't want masking for agents anymore. Now, it doesn't seem super likely that we'll get some of these really big changes if there was some sort of compromise reached, but we could be seeing some reforms being made to federal immigration enforcement. And typically, you know, with a shutdown, there is some sort of push and pull, and someone does eventually have to cave in order to keep these agencies funded, because as I said, there would be broader implications far beyond the world of immigration here.
And I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on a lot of things. So there are, of course, a lot of questions here. And that's, of course, why we have you here. I wanted to ask if there's really anything that maybe people misinterpret about this situation, don't fully understand.
So the big thing, as I mentioned, is ICE and a lot of Trump's immigration agenda was already funded last July. And so what this is doing and what this shutdown is an attempt to change policy and certain tactics, right? In terms of the actual funding fight, it would be fairly minimal in terms of the impact if they said, we're not going to fund ICE or Border Patrol for this certain period of time, because they already got the money to hire all of these new agents at ICE, correct? So when we're dealing with some of these things, it's important to keep that in mind, that this is really about a push to change immigration tactics and how this is conducted right now. Obviously, there's a lot of tension with Minnesota. That was kind of the catalyst for this. They agreed, we're going to pass the rest of this spending package and we're going to split this off. That was the deal made between the White House and the Democrats. And then now we're actually seeing some of the tail end of that. There was some push to maybe do another stopgap bill, right? John Thune was like, maybe we can extend this a little bit longer, but Democrats have said, no, we want a deal that would fund this through September, but we want to see some of these changes. But obviously, as this started, some of the Republicans were saying that Democrats were not negotiating in good faith at that stage.
One question that I get pretty much all the time when we have a situation like this or anything involving politics, lawmakers, the question I get all the time is essentially, how is this going to impact me? Why should I care? So I wanted to ask you why you feel, based on your reporting, of course, and your expertise, that the average American should be paying attention to what's going on here.
So two big things, FEMA and TSA. So if this shuts down, I'm not pretty sure not every American has some sort of in-person stake in the immigration debates that we're having in this country, but you might be flying soon, right? Obviously, check for updates on TSA if this does shut down and some of the impacts there. During the last shutdown, we saw a lot of people call out, and then a lot of people had to work briefly without pay for that 43-day shutdown, right? So that could impact air travel, right? There could be some impacts to FEMA if there's a lapse in funding, if you were recently impacted by a disaster, right? So when we look at these things and some of these other agencies that are implicated here, maybe you're a Coast Guard family, right? So definitely checking for these sorts of updates and seeing where the funding is going to be stopped, right? That is going to be critical. And those are some of the broader implications that we get when we get a closure like this.
What do we need to be watching for here in the coming hours as all of this kind of plays out?
Well, we need to first be looking to see if any details of the legislative text sent from the White House to the Democrats is going to be made public. A lot of these negotiations so far have been kind of kept behind closed doors. We don't really know too much yet about what potential reforms, if any, would actually look like. And so we could be seeing people inch closer to getting toward some sort of solution here, but it's not looking great right now in terms of the actual timing to avoid a shutdown. There could be a world maybe where we see something a few days from now after it's already closed, but you guys were reporting that there is going to be some sort of test vote today to kind of get a feel for where lawmakers are at on this process.
And that'll definitely give us an indication there of where we're headed. Cameron Arcand, thank you so much, as always, for being here with us and helping to break it down. Anything you want to add before I let you go?
I think just definitely we could be seeing some sort of major changes here that they're pushing, but obviously the Republicans have stood strong on this. There was a push by one of the Democrats in the House to basically fund DHS, but split it from ICE and Border Patrol. And John Barrasso, who is the Senate Majority Whip, he said that is not happening. So definitely some of those ideas getting shot down as well.
Cameron Arcand, thank you so much for being here with us. We definitely appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.